Well, welcome everybody. I'm Dan DeGryse. This is Straight Talk. I'm here with my co-host Rob Fisher, and we got a special guest, Mike Gagliano. Actually, I'm going to be part of the guest too, but I'm just going to open up the show and let Rob show you how cool he is as the host. And I'm going to be the problem interviewee. But before we get going, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Something that we've been dealing with all throughout, obviously, the country and the world. Maybe we should all just kind of do this for the period. I didn't tell you this, Rob, but it's just things that just come to my head really quick. But I'm not going to do that. I don't even know if you could hear me, but so Rob and I have talked on and off about what we were going to do this segment. And we thought it fitting with a lot of people, especially with myself being recently semi-retired and Mike being, I guess you could say, semi-retired because he still teaches and married and does talks and speeches and so forth. So we never really retire as fire service personnel, but we kind of want to talk about the transition and the retirement. And Rob will talk a little bit more about that, but I just want to give you an intro and say a few words before my man takes the lead. But welcome everybody. And Rob, take it away from there and I'll answer whatever questions you got.
Thanks, Dan. This conversation started, we had a show back in July or August. We had Chief Pat Kenny on, and as a result of the show, Dan had just recently, or not recently, he was new to retirement, and we were talking about some of the transitions, the challenges that being retired can be, going from the fire service and getting into retirement. And so I thought, as we talked about this, I said, Dan, I think I want to talk to you about retirement. And then I'd like to bring on a good friend and a mentor of mine, Mike Gagliano, who has been retired for a while. And we had talked about his retirement and getting into retirement. So I knew that I got two pretty busy guys that were in fairly busy departments that had done a lot in their organization to improve their organization and also improving the American Fire Service. And then it's just like, let's just check in. Let's see, how's retirement going? Let's see what we can do to better prepare for retirement, because I know I'm 52, and so I've got retirement right around the corner. And I'll be honest, I'm not necessarily looking forward to it. I know that it's going to be a challenge for me. So hopefully through this conversation, I'll be better prepared, and our listeners will be better prepared to take that next transition into that chapter and into our into our lives. So before we really get going on, Dan, myself, and just in case there's somebody out there that doesn't know Mike Gagliano, I'll let Mike introduce himself, but I want to welcome Mike to the show, because I know catching up with you it can be difficult, and I know you're at home because I see all your awesome guitars. But Mike, you want to give an introduction?
Honored to be with you guys. Really, there couldn't be two more exemplary representations of what the fire service is all about than you two fellas. So it's an honor you'd even think of me. And retirement, Rob, I think it's cool that you're sweating it a little bit. I think that's a good sign. That means you get it. You get how blessed you've been. You get how awesome it is to be able to wear our badge and to be on this ride, and I'm sure we'll talk about a few of the downside type of things, but none of that's coloring around the lines, man. To what the main drawing is being a part of what we have the privilege of being a part of, and getting a ticket on this ride that you're still on. Dan and I have stepped off of the main train anyway, still kind of we're hanging out and watching you cool kids still do the stuff, but never a day goes by for me that I am not grateful to God for the opportunity I got to put on a fire badge, to get on a fire truck, and to be a part of that incredible team. A couple different teams for me. I'll never, there'll never be a day where I won't be grateful for it. And while I do believe it was time, when I retired, it definitely was time for me. It was the right time. Not a day goes by that I don't miss it, man. I mean, I miss going to fires, and I miss being in the firehouse. Depending upon what we talk about, I'm a straight guy. I'm an honest guy. I'm a straightforward guy, Robert. Even sometimes maybe to a deficit at times. I pretty much just try to be authentic and tell you what's going on. There is a bunch that I do not miss, a bunch. But man, the camaraderie in the firehouse, the whole vibe of being with this kick-ass group of men and women who they dig being together and they love being in the middle of people's worst day and trying to make it better. Going to fires. I just, John Odegaard from Seattle Fire, he's a photographer. He shoots out pictures every now and again. And the last couple of days, there's been photos of buildings I've been in, the places I've frequented, both as a firefighter and as a civilian, that have burned. And watching my friends go to those fires. There's a reason, Rob, why you may not be looking forward to it, brother. That's going to be one of them. And I think that's a great thing. I think that's a good thing. So I don't really feel like people care about bio all that much, to be honest. So, I did the job for 33 years. I was blessed. All but 2 of those years, 2.5, I did on a fire truck, going to fires in a firehouse. And that's the way I wanted to go out. And I retired out of, at the time, the busiest firehouse in Seattle Fire, little three rig firehouse that went on over 9,000 runs a year between the 3 of them, which I know some of you are busier than that. So God bless you, man. Good for you. That was enough for an old man. That was plenty. So I loved what I was privileged by God to do, and I'm grateful for it every day.
And I think we'll get back to 31s because that might tie to a little bit of some of the challenges, when you were talking about the frustrations of
Sure.
We'll just say the political side, the
Sure.
political bullshit of our service, and that 31s is definitely one of those challenges, I should say, for us. So 30 some years, Seattle, and you were in the military before that too, as a firefighter. Yes,
I was. Yeah. Ann and I went into the Air Force. We're not trust fund babies, man. When we got married, we were poor college kids with, not a cent between us, basically. And so at the time, military was a good option. And our thought was I would go in and get, some schooling paid for. And I thought I was going to do computers, which if I had stuck with that, I'd probably be wealthier than I am right now. However, as luck would have it, when I got into the Air Force, the computer end of things was not open. And my grandfather was a firefighter. So I said, well, let me try that. I'll give that a go. Whew, man. You talk about pulling the lottery ticket. So I did a little over 3.5 years active, another 1.5 years in the reserves. And while I was in the reserves, working at McCord Air Force Base with, by the way, some of the guys from there may be watching this. It was truly, I learned about the fire service in the Air Force, but at McCord Air Force Base, because it was a bunch of local guys from jobs all around the place, some guys whose names you may know, like Brett Storr. Man, I learned from those guys what true, committed, kick-ass, into the job firefighting was all about, and realized if I'm going to do this and do it right, I got to elevate my game. And it came from spending time with those guys. So again, you're a product of the people that you hang around. You're a product of the people that you sharpen off of. And I owe a great debt to a few of those guys who they showed me what it looked like, what commitment looked like. Yeah.
And that's kind of part of the camaraderie, that your connection with people and how you grow together. It makes that hard, really hard to separate and go into retirement when you know that you're giving up a lot of that. And before the show, Peter and I were talking about how when it becomes your identity, the fire service becomes your identity. It's so difficult for some people to even stay remotely connected. Like, you're still connected. Both Sure. You and Dan are still doing stuff that's related to the fire service and retire as a retiree. But some people would find it very difficult that they literally have to, it's almost like a divorce. They've got to get out of it and never go back. Otherwise, it would cause them stress, essentially. So, Dan, let's get to you. So, Chicago Fire, and I don't remember how many years you did, like 45 or 50 years, I think, somewhere on there.
That was our last guest. That was Pat Kenny. He's in his 39th year. And Bobby, he's probably at like 100 right now. You ask him. No, 30. And it's actually interesting because that was my college football number. So it's kind of cool, easy to remember now. So if you'd asked me like in 5 years, I'd remember that, hopefully. It was 30 years.
So 30 years with Chicago. What else did you do in Chicago Fire? You retired out as a BC, but in the Chicago Fire Department, you were in part of other projects. One of them being big with retirement and suicide. And
yeah, well, I'll be honest with you. The fire service wasn't my first intent. The reason I'm here, and it's interesting to hear people's backstory. I love what Mike kind of just shared, is that when I got out of school, I thought I wanted to get into business, and then I thought I wanted to get into law enforcement because my dad was a cop and Chicago cop, and heard all the stories. So I'm like, I wanted to do it, but he wouldn't let me take the city of Chicago test. He actually told me to take the fire test, and then the FBI didn't want me, the Secret Service didn't want me, and the state police passed me up. So the fire service got me, and here I am. But things don't happen by accident. There's a reason why I got in the fire service. And yeah, I mean, before I was in the fire service, I worked in behavioral health, working with adolescents. I mean, it's no different than the fire service, right?
Yeah.
So I worked with kids with severe behavioral disorders. Hello, the three of us and everybody that's watching. So I learned how to be a parent to kids, which was great. And then when I got in there, I learned that there were people that helped firefighters. And I'm like, So I actually called the guy, and the typical firefighter is like, what do you want? And I'm like, this guy, 30 something years in the fire service, his name was Don Manning. Some people know him. He saved more lives of people that had addiction and mental health issues than anybody in the fire service in regards to from buildings. And when he got sick, another guy took his spot. I helped out, and then found myself in the year 2000 running our union's EAP program, which I knew nothing about EAP. I knew a lot about counseling, but I was tasked with really supporting 8,000 active and retired members and their spouses and kids. So you're talking 20, 30,000 people, and we had a staff of 2. And I was like, yeah, we know, big fire, big hose, big fire, a lot of people. Yeah, 20 something thousand people, and you only had 2 staff, not good. So luckily the union believed in the EAP program, and what it really started out is peer support. It was firefighters who had a background and wanted to support other firefighters. And luckily I had some education. I had some personal experience growing up in a household where, my father dealt with some mental health struggles and addiction. So I learned it. And, it's interesting where Bobby wrote that editorial, Stay in Your Lane. I never believed that I am going to be able to help somebody. I want to, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to help them, because I couldn't help my dad stop drinking. But what I did is I had a passion for trying to help people find what they wanted. And if it was to stop drinking, it was a better lifestyle. If it was a counselor, a therapist, a chiropractor with pain management, which we all are very familiar with, anything, life coach, whatever. We evolved the EAP, and then it led me to realizing that there weren't very many programs out there that were specific to our culture, to our first responders, which started where I'm in now. I didn't fully retire. I'm the director of the Florian program, which is in Rockford, Illinois, that deals specifically with uniformed service personnel. And back in 2000 and 2010 and to 2014, before we started this, I searched the country, and there was only 2 programs that were out in the East Coast that dealt specifically with us. So I'm like, well, if you can't find it, then you got to build it. And that's what I did from there. And that's really my second career, which I've been in for 34 years.
Wow. And, I find it interesting listening to both you and Mike talk about no interest really in being a firefighter. And for me, I was like 5 years old when I visited my first fire station, 21's in Greenwood. And it was like, I'm going to be a Seattle firefighter. That's all I ever wanted to be, and never got to be a Seattle firefighter. But it's just,
Mike took your job. Mike took
Hey, Robbie. Hey, Robbie. If you, when they post the next chief of the department with Seattle Fire, if you apply for that and get it, I might come back.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. But yeah, I just, I see this is going to be one of my challenges, and that I mean, I know you guys love the fire service and you had great careers and you had a lot of successes but really the fire service for me is truly an identity thing. And I don't know what I would have done if I didn't get into the fire service. And, I thought I was going to be a rock star one day, cause I was a musician, and that wasn't going to happen looking at all of Mike's guitars behind him. But yeah, I truly believe I was put on this earth to be a firefighter. And so I see this next stage of my life being something really difficult, and what am I going to do preparing myself to deal with it? And, am I going to get into staying with a magazine like Fire Engineering and keep writing? But that to me there's some issues of relevance. And when you've been gone for a while, and how relevant are you to the day and the conversation and all that. So, but yeah, I find it fascinating. Neither of you guys were really into the fire service growing up, and you just kind of fell into it. And but you guys have done a great job. Like I said, you guys are both my mentors, and I love talking with you guys and getting stuff from you. So, Mike, was there anything that prompted you to retire? Did you, and I don't want to lead you into 31s and that piece, but I know that was a big deal. And I'm sure that weighed heavily on you. And that, as we were talking about the political crap that goes on, and especially in a big city fire department, but was there anything that prompted you, or was it just like, bam, I've made it over 53 in the state of Washington, and made it over the age of 53, and Ann and I are happy, and we can, I can do other endeavors?
Well, when I knew you were going to ask the question, so I've actually thought about it and how to even speak about it, to where it makes any kind of sense. Because in any decision of that nature, you think about doing something for, 33 plus years of your life. It's kind of your professional. That's what you've done for life. Whatever else we do for the rest of our lives will be great. And we're excited about, Ann and I are excited about, the next chapters and the things that are afforded to us. But I'm practical, I'm pragmatic enough to recognize I probably don't have another 33 years of professional input left in me, right? What I did, in the fire service, that's kind of my professional stamp, if you will. Everything else grows out of that. The easiest way I can describe it is that you pretty much will know when the time is right. And I was told that. I actually, about a year before I retired, I never even thought about retirement. Didn't prepare for it, never thought about it. I'm not a big planner. Ann and I are not money-driven people. So, we always hope that we're just going to like die with $1 in the bank or something, because we're just not, we're not driven by that. We're driven by other things, by experience and life and enjoying each other. I did not prepare at all, didn't take any retirement classes, didn't do any of that. I'm busy. I got a lot of things going on. That takes up my time and my energy. But about a year before I retired, I started to think about it. And for the first time, it cropped up in my mind. My intent was to do 30 in Seattle at a minimum, to get to 30 years in Seattle. I got to about 28 and a half. So obviously it came a little quicker than I was expecting. But a year or so in, it's like, man, I'm tired. I'm really tired. I'm starting to, I'm feeling tired. And I've felt tired before, but I bounce right back. And now I'm not. Now, it wasn't a busy house, really busy house. So, going to work there was no sleeping at 31. It's, even if you didn't go out, I never really slept that great at the firehouse, and there I rarely slept at all. The weight of responsibility of being a fire captain in a firehouse, I carried it heavy, and maybe heavier than I should have. That's probably something we can talk about. I don't know how other people carry the responsibility. I only live in my shoes. I felt it, and I felt the significance of being in charge of that firehouse and those people being under my care, and the citizens needing us to perform well. And so I carried that weight heavily. There came a point where no matter what I did, I was never rested. I could take a week off and I never felt like I was getting fully rested or fully re-energized or fully charged. And there was about a year of that. So you can imagine, by the time you get to the end of the year of that, when I finally decided, I told Dan, I think I'm done. I was empty. My tank was empty. I'd used the fumes that came off the fumes, to try to do all the things that I needed to do. And I did try to even take a little bit of time off. I did. I never took time from Seattle Fire. I never requested any, mental stress leave. I never took anything that wasn't owed to me, but I actually paid guys to work for me some shifts. I was able to give merits and comp time and those types of things, and to try to get revived. And it really just, it wasn't happening. And, to be authentic, leadership changed in Seattle Fire. There was a transition within the organization. And I felt like at the level I was in the organization, I felt like it was important for me to be on board with the changes that were happening, or to step aside. And so from going to being involved in a lot of things, the transition that was happening, I'm not being critical. Everybody's got their leadership theory. And my feeling is the citizens picked the mayor picks the fire chief. And they decided what they wanted to lead Seattle Fire. And so combination of that, being tired, some of the direction the department was going to be challenging for me to not just kind of be at odds with that. And I was too tired to continue to fight those battles. And then the final thing was my back was really bothering me. And I don't know how this was for you or for Dan, but up until the last year on the job, I never thought about going into a fire, getting hurt, ever. I just didn't think about that stuff. I thought about what we were doing, and I have one speed at fires, is go get some and get the guys involved in the fire and figure out a way for us to get dirty and those types of things. In December, I retired the following June. In December, on 2 occasions, I threw my back out doing non-heroic stuff. One was getting a painting for Anne for her Christmas present. And I shifted this way and my back didn't shift with me. And I was like, man, if I can drop myself to the floor shifting a painting, what happens when I'm up on a roof with these guys or down in a basement and I do some little stupid thing, and now all of a sudden, not only am I not leading this crew, they got to haul me out of there and put themselves at risk. And so for about from December on, all of a sudden that was starting to weigh on me. So a combination of those factors of tired, leadership stuff, a little more concerned physically about the wear and tear on my body, it painted this picture of it's time. And I wanted to go out of Seattle Fire loving it. I loved it going in. I can't even thank Seattle Fire enough for everything I'm able to do now. Is primarily because of Seattle Fire and the reputation of Seattle Fire that I didn't earn. I got grafted into that and tried to live up to it. I wanted to go out loving it. And a cautionary tale for you. A lot of guys are hanging on to the job right now because of identity or because of a paycheck, and it's a reality, healthcare. My healthcare bill right now is $2,000 a month. It's a lot. A lot of guys are hanging on for that, and I understand it. But I can tell you, I could give you 10 names right now, Rob, probably half of them of Seattle firefighters who did a lot of cool stuff for Seattle Fire, even worked more time than me on the job, cannot stand Seattle Fire. When they think of Seattle Fire, they think of it with a bad taste in their mouth. One guy told me, long career in Seattle Fire. He said, every time I think about Seattle Fire, vomit comes up in the back of my throat. And it made me want to cry. Made me want to cry for that guy. Don't hang around so long that you get to the point where you hate the job, hate the organization. Be sure you're at the point when you leave that you go out loving it and that you are grateful for the thing and the time that you had. It's a complex answer. I'll stop there, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. And then, later, if you want to talk a little about 31s, I can go into some of the unique stresses that were present there.
Yeah, to kind of summarize, and I want to turn over to Dan, and I want him to talk a little bit about cortisol, because I know he's done some stuff with that. We've talked about cortisol before, which probably leads to some of the sleep issues that you had. So I hear that sleep is an issue. We had change of leadership, and I don't want to say the philosophy, but it's not the same game that it was that you led most of your career through. And then physical side of things, and that all of those combined together to, basically is like the alarm bell sounding that if I'm going to leave this place, I'm going to be happy when I go, I'm going to do it now. Otherwise, I'm going to be just miserable when I'm leaving. I'm going to be miserable. I'm not going to look at this as it was a great part of my life. And so, yeah, I get that. I get that. Dan, you want to kind of answer the question too, what prompted you to, but I'd like to talk a little bit about cortisol and how that impacts in our ability, being shift workers. And I know those that are on here probably are like, don't talk about losing the 24-hour shift or a 48-hour shift or whatever it is. But the reality is that sleep is a big issue for us, and it can cause us some problems down the road.
Yeah, well, I can tell you without question, I've been lucky both in positions I've been in, my career, and off life too. We'll talk about sleep issues and cortisol, stuff that really up until now hasn't been discussed much. And for me, I didn't think about retirement the first, 20 years that I was on the job. It didn't even cross my mind. I looked at old guys and I'm like, man, they're old. But I never, like a lot of us, I don't consider us old. I'd consider us older, but not old like when I came on the job. And I mean, they look like my grandfather, for crying out loud. And I just think about what they put their bodies through. But most of them stayed on the job until they were about 63. We had, and I kind of were talking about this before, is that with our contract, I got to take my hat off to all the previous firefighters in Chicago and any across department in the unions that have guaranteed certain benefits in their contract. And some don't have that ability, and I can't do anything about that. But I know for us, I was planning on working 32 years, and that was going to take me to 58. And I figured, well, I'll go to 60 because that would get me my insurance until 65. So I just had in my head, I'll go up to 32 years. And then all of a sudden the contract changed to, I could get full pension at 29 years. So I figured, okay, 29, but I'll be 54. And then there was a thing in our contract that said, well, if you go to 55, you could get your insurance till you're 65 for a certain amount of money, for a certain percentage of your salary, which was, I won't get into it because people will get mad at me. And I don't want any more people mad at me than already are. But it was a significant reduction. So I'm like, all right, I'll be 55 with 30 years, and that'll be good enough. But yeah, the question is, will I be ready? And I can tell you that there's no planning for that. Nobody told me, hey, get ready for retirement other than some sort of financial stuff. My father didn't tell me that. My coworkers didn't tell me that. Therapists didn't tell me that. And no one told me that. We should truly have a discussion throughout somebody's career That's why we have prevention programs. That's why we have NFPA. That's why we have all that stuff to prevent fires, injuries, and accidents. And we should have an understanding of what we're getting ourselves into. So, as you know, I did research on suicide in the Chicago Fire Department. What I also looked at is other causes of death. Number one cause of death, cardiac. 40% of our members over a 20-year period died of cardiac-related illness. The average, 25%. That's pretty significant. And I've shared that with some people in our department. The other thing is I looked at longevity after retirement while I looked at the suicide rate. And when I looked at longevity, I always heard, you get 11 pension checks. Well, guys didn't wear masks before. I get that. And they lived hard lives and just quality of life back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Well, when I look back in 1990 to 2000 and 2000 and 2010, the average life expectancy of a Chicago firefighter was only 4 years after retirement. I mean, what in God's green earth is that? Love the job, I get, but what are we doing to ourselves and to our family? And then the next 10 years was, I think it was 11 years. But still, you put 30, 35 years in a career, and some people work for 40 years or more, and you only get 11 years. And then what quality of life? I mean, Mike just shared about his back injury. I laugh at myself. I had back surgery over a daily day. Now, one of the stupidest things you could possibly do, but I was a battalion chief. So I'm like, what am I going to be doing? Well, I didn't realize, oh, dummy, you got to get out of the car, the buggy, and people will laugh, like young guys will laugh. But if you just had a laminectomy on your spine, you're not supposed to be twisting. So I actually had it, I got off shift, had it that morning, was home for 4 days and went back to work. Not the greatest idea in the world. So I'm lucky I'm not paralyzed for doing this anyhow. So, but that type of stuff, plus the longevity, the cardiac, the fact that it fell into place with the union, and I remember talking to a guy that retired a year before me. His name was Warren Stamer. He's a captain in my house. And I said, hey, you ready? Because I wasn't ready. I knew I had everything in place and things looked good, but I didn't feel it. And he goes, like Mike said, his buddy said, you'll know. And wouldn't you know that about 4 months into my last year, so I had about 8 months left, I felt it. I'm like, oh, that's what it feels like. I was excited. I wasn't nervous, but it was different. And I came to work every morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, did my routine, got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, or stayed awake up until 5 o'clock, like Mike knows, and then left, and then went on to do my other job. And I want to share that piece a little bit too. The ability to have other things to help your longevity in life and in your mind. You got to have something else than the fire service. If you don't, you're doing yourself a disservice. And I mean that not only to you, but to anybody that's out there. People that are working 2 full-time or part-time jobs in the fire service, the longevity is going to wear on them, cumulative stress. And then we could talk about that. But that last 8 months, probably those 7 months were long. They were long. I'm like, it's not that I don't miss the circus, I miss the clowns. You all could think back to, everybody had fires, and I don't want to get into that. And downtown Chicago for 7 years, man, I've seen everything under the sun that is not normal. Those are the things, what is it? The high risk, low frequency. That's downtown Chicago, just like possibly Seattle and the things that Mike has seen. Stressful. And I didn't realize the amount of stress that it was causing my body until the day so then the last 30 days that I worked flew by. And then it was retirement day. And then I left that morning. No lie. It felt like the weight of a giant mountain came off my shoulders when I went from upper whacker drive to lower whacker drive. It felt good. I didn't know I had it on me. And I'm somebody that talks about stress all the time. So I had a lot of good things that fell into place for me. I made some decisions based on research that I've done. And the reason I do this for Bobby and with you and ask guys like Mike to do this, and I know Mike does a presentation, but it's about education and awareness. We only heard this stuff through short articles and from conversations we might have seen people at conferences. Now we have this where we could get the word out and say, hey, don't be a statistic and not make it long term in retirement.
So hit on the cortisol issue with our sleep, because that I think is another big aspect of the problem with firefighters is, how much sleep we don't get, and the stress that ties to the stress.
All you got to do is look in any bunk room now and you see all the CPAP machines. All you got to do is walk in there and hear the people snoring and the bad sleep you have. And you don't really know that in the beginning until you get to the elder statesmen of the group, where you just don't recover that well anymore. I owe my life and my understanding about cortisol to my wife. I thought I was depressed, and I could have been, but I was lethargic in the morning. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but it changed. I didn't feel good. I was foggy. My concentration was altered. I couldn't remember things. I was tired. I drank a lot of coffee, and I just could not wake up until about noon or 1 o'clock. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Had many discussions with my wife. My wife does some research. She comes back to me and she goes, I think you might have adrenal fatigue. And I'm like, what? I go, what are you talking about? She goes, yeah, there's this thing called cortisol. I go, what have you been doing? Anyhow, so I do some research on cortisol. It's a hormone. It's a stress hormone that is released when people are stressful. And I went and got my cortisol level tested. You can get it through blood or saliva. And it's supposed to be between 3 and 23. It's supposed to be higher in the morning to wake you up. It's a natural process of your body to help wake you up. And then at night, it's supposed to be half of what it was in the morning so you could get back to sleep. Mine was 5 in the morning and 5 in the evening. So it was low and it stayed the same throughout the day. So that was bad and worse. And as I've done talks and as I've worked at this treatment center, we've had people test it. And what we find out is that those people that have high anxiety and have PTSD, that their systems are on all the time, they typically have sleep issues, insomnia, can't get to sleep or stay asleep, or sleep for short periods of time. And they have an inverted cortisol level where it's lower during the morning. It's not real low, they still wake up, but it's higher in the evening. And so there's a number of things that I had to do. One, realize what the hell was going on. And then number two, put a bunch of things in motion so that I can address the way my system was responding. One was not carry the weight of that world, which I told you already I felt when I left, but it was going from one job to the next. It was not transitioning well from work to home. It was driving downtown Chicago 24 hours a day and then driving on the streets. And we all know that, from the Ubers to the taxis to the bicyclists to the pedestrians to you name it, that just stress us out, even though we may not feel it. My digestion changed a little bit. And like I told you, all the other symptoms. So I had to realize it. I had to eat better. I had to make sure I tried on my days off to sleep at a certain time. I had to take away carbohydrates, sugars, and reduce the coffee. And I had to eat things like greens, vegetables, proteins, and like I said, less carbs. but I also had to practice a thing that anybody that's ever done any type of therapy is kind of mindfulness. The same thing I did is when I got that back surgery, is that when I got out of the car, I couldn't just do what I used to do and just herky jerky motions. I had to turn, be intentional, put my feet on the ground, and then get out. Because I did the herky jerky one time. I'm laughing at myself. It's the vulnerability that I think Mike appreciates, right? And you, Rob, is we can laugh at ourselves. The herky jerky, whatever that. And I paid for it for about a week. And I'm like, what the hell did I just do? I just did what I did for the last, what I've done for the last 20 something years and jumping out of rigs. But I'm older and have more stuff. So get off the back thing, but I had to be intentional about how I address the stress in my life and what I put inside my body. And then within 6 months, the cortisol changed from 5 and 5 to 16 and 9. So I was good in the morning. I could see clearly. I didn't have the fog. My concentration was back. I felt good. And then it came down to about, almost half in the evening. And I don't have a problem getting to sleep, but it's been 13 months since I've been retired, and I have not slept through the night. Now, most people I know take anywhere between 3 and 6 months, some as long as 2.5 years. But it depends on what your body has learned over your career. And what I've learned is the busier somebody's been in their career, the more sleep interruptions they have. I'm not going to say that you have a sleep disorder, but you have sleep interruptions. So when I first retired, I was waking up at 12, 1:30, 2:30, 4:30, and then 5:30. And I knew it was going to happen because those were when the runs came in. And then now I'm to the point where I have good days and bad, but I have more good days than bad. Last night I only woke up twice, so I consider that a win. And I'm curious on Mike, how Mike has experienced.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I've heard a lot of individuals who retired. They said, man, you don't realize how your sleep improves when you get into retirement. So Mike, how's your sleep?
I won't be a source of encouragement for you, brother.
Oh no.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, to be honest, I feel like I brought the inability to sleep all that great to the job. I mean, I don't think I've had a good night's sleep since junior high. So I think that's just shutting my mind down. I don't know that I think overly deep thoughts, but I think a lot of them, and no, I retired June, so it'd be about 2.5 years ago. A little bit of change, but I think one of the challenges we face, and you alluded to it, is getting to sleep is a little bit of a challenge for me. It always has been, but because of what I've done for most of my professional life, once I wake up, I'm used to waking up and having to do important things. And for the last, 15 years of my career, having to lead people, and so needing to be sharp. And even for some of that, when you're a driver, if you're on the tailboard, on a bunch of the BS aid runs we go on, I remember it when I was on the turntable of the truck or on the tailboard. You could kind of, when you're going on a BS aid run, you could kind of just, stay in kind of fog mode, and you can't do it when you're driving, or when you're officer, you just can't do it. At least I couldn't. And so I got used to coming to full awake. And that even really happened even when the engine went out. Even though, I was on the truck, I came to more full awake. And that's what I'm experiencing still. Even if I sleep, once I wake up, I have a tendency to come way more awake and not be able to go back to sleep. So far, I'm not a good case study. Most of my friends, I think, who are normal in the fire world, I've heard 3 months, but my experience with my buddies, most of them, right about at the year mark, they feel like they've kind of hit a decent where, you're sleeping pretty good. Most of us, we get into our 50s and 60s. Now it's you got to get up and go to the bathroom, more than you did when you were 30. So some of it is that for them, I think. But after about a year, I'd say my hope for most everybody is you at least start to smooth a bit.
Yeah. Um, you guys answered a couple of the questions that I wanted to ask you regarding, like, did you feel prepared? It seems like you guys were at that moment ready, but you were never really 100% prepared for retirement. And the other question I wanted to ask you was, did your unions do things outside of the financial aspect of things? Did your unions do anything that prepared you for retirement? And it doesn't seem like that's something that goes on in the fire service today, that we worry more about, hey, do you have the right pension system, or do you have deferred comp of some sort that adds to the pension system? But it's just like, okay, here's retirement, go. And so, either of you guys have any experience in the union that helped you?
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it only happened through the contract where two things. One is the pension board provided a seminar, and that was beneficial from a financial standpoint, because obviously we all know in the fire service, not all getting paid the best, and we have to work a lot of overtime or work two jobs. Finance is an important thing, and Mike talked about the insurance piece, which is extraordinary, and many people have to stay on for a considerable long time because that's a big fear. But from a behavioralistic and a physical standpoint, no. The union did provide, not for everybody, but a physical through a grant that they got through the contract with the city. But if I could offer, if any department out there right now wants to take care of their members, yeah, they should start with a baseline from the day they come on and then see what happens throughout their career. We talk about being physically ready, and obviously, I talk about being emotionally and psychologically ready for the job. But at the very basis, what we have to do, and we have to start looking at this sooner and later, we have to have people that, and I'm not talking about one department or two, I'm talking about 50% or more, if not all of them, have to physically test us like we do from a physical agility test, and get our physical baseline, and then study and then look at that over our career. And one of them, and Mike, I don't know if you've looked into this, and I know this happens to me when I do my presentations. We have an amygdala that, it's a gland in our body that learns. What we have is a learned behavior over 25, 30, and 35 years. And we didn't learn firefighting just in the academy. I mean, many firefighters now think they know everything after 3 or 6 months, right? We included, we're ready to fight the world, and found out we really didn't know squat. And Bobby will tell you that, any person worth their salt, just like the two of you, is we still learn. We feel like we're in a deficit, that there's so much more to learn. But if we don't measure it, if you talk to any statistician or any clinical person worth their weight, you have to measure it, and we don't do that. We just like from alcoholism and drug addiction in the fire service and drinking on the job, and we won't get into that because we talked about that in regards to some of the guys in Chicago and probably other big cities or small, it doesn't matter, that there are certain things that we should and shouldn't do. And we should look closer at our physical well-being over our career. And if the department doesn't do it, God damn it, the union better do it, or we better do it. Get together. And that's the whole thing then, not to tie stuff in here, but peer support and being there for our brothers and sisters, and not for necessarily mental health, just to have a conversation. Like I said, I don't miss the circus, but I miss the clowns. And the cool thing about the text, when you text a couple of the clowns, they clamor back, and it's the best medicine.
Mike, did your union do anything to help you guys out, or is it just financial side of things?
I'm really grateful for Local 27 and for the leadership through the years. I think, as has been alluded to, early in my career, there wasn't a tremendous amount done in that regard, because I think there was just a lack of knowledge about the stuff that was going on and the things that were impacting us. Rob, you and I work in a state that has a divided pension system. And so that had some impact for the first probably at least half of my career, maybe a little more. Our union was dominated by leadership from the left one pension system. And in the left one pension system, they had health care. They had some things that once left two, which is the system you and I came in under, we didn't have those things. There was a real war there, kind of a clashing of tensions, whereas left two could have used some more of this stuff, some healthcare benefits, longevity type of stuff. Left one, they were, because they already had healthcare, they were looking for wages, salaries, wages and salaries, wages and salaries. Get the most money you can because their healthcare was taken care of. But I would say the last half of my career in particular, and that's not a shot at our leadership. The entire time I was in Seattle Fire, the leadership of our local worked their butts off to try to take care of us, protect us, get us the best they could. I'm eternally grateful for the thankless work that was done. And firefighters can be a thankless lot at times, when it comes to what we have. We got this amazing thing. Yeah, but what about this?
We gave up this.
Yeah. To the positive, I think our union has been doing over the past 10 years, trying to get us firefighter physicals. We really never had that type of thing available. Developing a peer support team, and that's not only the union, but also with help from the leadership of Seattle Fire. I think there's much more acceptance within the fire service, and certainly within Seattle Fire. If you need help, ask for help. We'll help you. It's not a stigma. It doesn't come with a scarlet letter that's stamped on you that you're a wackadoo or a weirdo. As a matter of fact, I think the nice thing that has happened, and a lot of the work that Dan has done, and so many other really trusted and reliable people in the fire service has done. I think the message that's going out to fire service stuff, and those of you that are listening, look, you spend a career going to stuff and seeing stuff that no human being should ever have to see. You see people at their worst. You see people at their worst day. You see people lose their loved ones. You see carnage and trauma and despair. And you do it in the middle of the night. And you go home and try to segue into your normal life. You do that as a steady appetite, as a steady diet for the entirety of your career. If you don't have a few things kicking around in your head, that just means that you're a bloody psychopath, man. You're a sociopath. You don't feel. I think it's cool that we're now recognizing that if you're losing some sleep, if you're carrying stuff around, if you're not able to let something go, it means you're normal. You're a normal human being. And normal human beings do need, from time to time, they need somebody to help step in, help them deal with things, even going on to, medical intervention and that type of stuff. I'm glad that it's viewed as normal now. And a lot of that was just some really gutty people saying, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And I don't want to be the next guy who jumps off a bridge. I don't want to be the next guy that you read about that dived into a bottle of pills or, is now drinking a couple bottles of scotch a day just to try to kill the pain or ease the burden.
Yeah. That's one of the challenges, struggles for senior citizens or retirees. Not putting you guys in the senior citizen category, even though
why does he keep on saying the senior citizen thing? Hey, listen, you're done. Mike, I need a new co-host.
But I know, and I always give Dan, a bunch of crap about being a senior citizen. But I reached out to Dina Ali because I'm preparing for this and going, what is the retirees' suicide rate, and Dan kind of talked a little bit about his study that he did in Chicago. But as we get older, it gets harder to live. It's our purpose, our relevance, burden on a family, and this becomes a really difficult thing for people to live through. And I just see that with firefighters, you have all of this baggage that you carry through your entire career. And then now you go into retirement, you're disconnected. For those that are really connected to the fire service, I mean, really, it's their identity. You become disconnected. You no longer really have that system in place for you, and you just don't know what to do. And that is going to be a potential problem for our elderly as they're moving through. And that's what the data shows from the CDC.
Yeah, one of the, you asked me, Rob, is that we don't have much data at all in the fire service in regards to suicide. Even health, again, the best thing that a department can do is start doing physicals the day that person starts and then see the progression and try to address it. But we probably won't in our lifetime have data on suicide. But if you look at the CDC and the age group that is most likely to die by suicide, it's 75 and older. If what's important, because, and the other thing is that we're living longer. I shared with you that if we looked at the 1990s, we lived on average 4 years after our retirement. And then in the 2000s, 11 years. So that doubled, that's good, but 11 years isn't enough. I have not looked at the data the last 10 years. And I don't think I will, but I'd like to think that it'll be 15 or 20, and I'll know more just from the people that I am retiring with. That the good thing is I don't get those phone calls or see those Facebook posts or notifications that people have died. We're living, and that's what we want to do. We're looking at that there's more to life than the fire service. But what I don't think people realize is that suicide has been a national epidemic for many, many years, many, many years. The increase in the incident rate based on the population has increased by 30 to 35% over a 10-year period that the CDC looked at. I think it was from 2006 to 2016, 30%. Now, if we were doing money management and we got 30% return on our money, everybody would want to know that, right? Everybody would be like, hey, Mike, how'd you do that? I want in. You're like, oh, sorry, it's only for me, Rob and Dan. You can't do it. But here's the thing. From a societal standpoint, we know that, well, from a department standpoint and from a culture standpoint, we know we're going to be more exposed to stuff than the average person. We know that. Now, if we don't do anything about it, shame on us. Well, I'll say shame on the departments and the chiefs that are out there and the people in leadership. Shame on them, because we know that now and we brought it out. People like you, Mike, and your wife, me, Rob, the Fools, Bobby Halton. It's out there. We don't need to talk about that anymore. It should be the stigma that if you're not doing something about it, that's weak and that's shameful. That if you're not doing something about it. The people that are being vulnerable now, that should be the lead. The people that are modeling stuff, that should be the lead. And, you know, going forward, the societal, if you look back when the nation started to intentionally look at suicide, it was back in 1999 by then President Bush, and asked the Surgeon General. It was a national crisis back then when 30,000 people were dying by suicide a year. We don't know last year, but the year before, almost 50,000. Okay? So forget about the job you're in. It's a national crisis because we all know, we all have kids. Forget about us dying by suicide. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but if one of our family members did, that would kill us from the inside out. So we should all be addressing that. And that's, forget about the statistics there for just us. It's everybody. And we need to address both physical and mental health. So I'll get off my soapbox.
But that goes into preparing, being ready for that next chapter in our life, be it firefighter or, you know, or computer guy, whatever it is. It's just, did we prepare? And that's what we've been talking about today is, you know, were we prepared to be able to do that? I'll go to Mike. Mike, was there anything that you would do differently now, you know, knowing where you're at, retire, you had a great career, and would you do, not so much would you do anything in your career differently, but in getting to this chapter in your life, would you do anything different?
Um, I've always found those questions really hard because everything that you do makes you who you are, and I mean, there's some things that I wish weren't true about me, but they're more internal things, my sins, my weaknesses, my failings. And I brought the good and the bad to Seattle Fire. They got to deal with the good and the bad parts of me. And so um, I I do think it's important. Let me phrase it this way to try to be helpful to the people who are considering it. How about that? Because there are things I would do differently in my career. Most of them, when I think about them, I think about at times um, the times that I was less than respectful or cruel to people, and that stuff haunts me because there is nothing, absolutely nothing good that ever comes about you demeaning somebody, demoralizing somebody, um, being cruel to somebody because you can or because you're in a position to do that. Nothing good comes from that. Other than, the one thing I always hope came from it is that they would look at those instances and goes, well, I'm not going to be like that jerk. I'm never going to do that to somebody. That's the only good thing I can see to come of it. Those types of things are the things that when I look back, there are instances, and there aren't a ton, but there are some that I think about where I wish I had dealt with people in a different way, in a more respectful and professional way. Those types of things. Here's what I would encourage you to do. Those of you that are listening, especially those of you that are thinking about it or getting closer or know you're going to do it the next 10 years. Um, I am really glad that when I hung my coat on the hook, that I could look in the mirror and go, there was nothing left on the playing field, baby. I gave it. I really did. I mean, it may not have been the best effort, but it was what I had to give, and there were some gaps and there were some holes and there were some things that, I could have done better, but it was not for lack of effort. It was not for lack of love for the job or love for the people that I work for. And I think you're going to want that. You're going to really want it when it's now time to not have that, because it is a big part of your identity. It is a chunk of who you are, and it shouldn't be all that you are, which I hope we get to talk about, but it is a big chunk of who you are, and you're going to want to feel like you gave it what you had and you didn't leave anything on the table. The second thing that I would hope that you would recognize is just to have gratitude, to be grateful. Instead of thinking about what it was that you didn't get or the opportunities that you didn't have, I feel like a healthy retirement should have a dump load of gratitude involved, that you had a chance to go on this ride, that I had a labor organization that was looking out for me and trying to do its best, to get me, a good retirement or a reasonable retirement and safe working conditions, at least as safe as we can do, and a respect for the people who invested in you. I could spend this whole show naming names of people through my career who took the time to invest in me in different ways and rub off the rough edges and try to help me to become a good firefighter and a good leader and a better man. And I think that sense of gratitude for what it was that you did have and that you got to go on the ride at all. There's a lot of people wanting to get in the door, and the three of us got to go on the ride. And those of you that are listening, you got to go on the ride. So just, again, that sense of gratitude. And then the third thing, fire is not everything. It's just not. And I know there's all kinds of groups out there. There's like, I get these emails from like the 1%ers group and the all in groups and the, kick ass and take names groups. And I love all of that. And I resonate with it. And I gave Seattle Fire and the fire service professionally everything I had to give. When Seattle Fire was done, my tank was empty. I gave it everything I had, but I never in the course of that ever sacrificed my family or sacrificed the people that were closest to me. They always took priority in giving everything I could. They took priority. And if you're listening to anything, here's why that's important. I have a picture. In fact, I'm thinking about writing an article on retiring about the lessons I've learned and that type of stuff. I have a picture of the last few seconds of my fire service career, my active fire service career. I took it right before I walked out of the firehouse for the last time as an active member of the fire department. And it's a picture of my coat hanging on the hook. And every one of you, Dan has done it. Rob, you will do it. Every one of you is going to have that day where that hook that you put your coat on for 20, 25, 30 years, 40 years, you're going to have a day when your coat goes on the hook for the last time. And then that chapter's written. It's done. I can tell you, your fire department, the day your coat goes on the hook, they're going to move on from you. They will. However big a name you are, you can be a Bill Guston type of a name, or a John Norman type of a name, or a John Mittendorf type of a name, an Alan Brunacini type of a name. Somebody who impacts things on that level. Your fire department is going to move on for you, and it's just and it's right, because the runs still happen. The next generation of leadership has to step up. The people still need to be served, and those spots need to be filled. I joke in our marriage classes, and I think you'll enjoy this. Here's how fast Seattle Fire moved on from me after 28 and a half years of giving it pretty much most years everything I had. The last day I worked, I was already kicked out of the email system, and I couldn't even log on to my own rig on the last shift. My guys had to log me on the rig. That's how quickly it's like, thanks for your service. Here's your little, thank you for your service plaque. And it's next man up. And so that's the right course of things. Imagine what a devastating day it is to have that coat hang on the hook and go home to an empty house, and go home to a destroyed marriage where your kids are going to 3 different places on the holidays, where your finances are divided in 4 different directions, and what was already a difficult retirement situation is now divided amongst 4 and 5 warring parties, and all the things that come with that. Now, I recognize that's a reality in our culture. I do. And life still goes on, and you can have great success even being in those types of divided situations. But man, come by it honestly. Don't let something as wonderful as the fire service be the thing that destroys your home life. And my feeling is you can do both of those things if you have them in the proper perspective and the proper priority. There are some, do you want me to keep going, Rob, or do you want?
You're good. You're good.
Okay. Here's a couple things to keep in mind and consider. You can't do everything. You just can't. You cannot. You have the same amount of hours in the day that Dan and Rob and I do. You got, X amount of hours in the day. You got X amount of energy. You got X amount of emotional energy and resources. In every decision you make, personally and professionally, something wins and something loses. As long as you're looking at it through that lens of, here's what I've committed my limited amount of time and resources to, and something wins today and something loses, it helps you, I think, to balance. Boy, I got this 7-year-old kid who's on a little league team, and I want to watch that ball game. Or I can go to the 5th training thing for the week, or I can go to the softball team that all the guys are on and participate there, and miss that 7-year-old little league game that you never get back. It helps you to put things in perspective. And I will, I'd be happy to stand up with anybody of you listening there and go through time spent committed to learning the craft of the job. I'd be happy to compare time spent. I really worked hard at it. I tried really hard at it. But brother, I am grateful beyond anything I can tell you that Ann and Michael and Ricky, my family, my parents, certainly I was gone sometimes, and we talked about when I would be gone and what that was. There's a reality. You have to earn a living, right? That's a reality. You have to go to work and you have to earn a living. But in balancing those priorities, it helped me on the retirement side to come home to a happy marriage, a happy home. And it really helped navigate some of the sadness and the loss that comes with no longer having active Seattle Fire and actively going to fires in my life. One of the real tenured senior guys, it was a nice thing for me to hear. He did not have this. He did not do this. 30 my time, 30 some years on the job, committed member of Seattle Fire, state of firefighter, old tenured salty vet, the kind of person that you could just sit and listen to talk about the job and you would learn something. He said, yeah, man, I gave 30 some years to Seattle Fire. I went, I turned in my uniform, I turned in my bunking gear, And the last thing that I did as a Seattle firefighter is they gave me a little piece of paper that said I didn't turn in my plastic spanner wrench from recruit school and I owed him $5. That was his exit out the door. See you later. Boy, that is a punch. That's a punch beyond description. And you better have some things in place that take the place of what it is that you're giving up, because it's a really cool and wonderful thing.
So what I'm hearing, Dan or Mike, is that there's got to be a purpose outside of the fire service. I mean, I feel like I was destined to be a firefighter, and that's what I was supposed to do. But I mean, obviously, my purpose is to have a great family life. I had a wonderful upbringing from parents. My dad's no longer here, but a wonderful upbringing from my parents, and being a part of an Italian family. All my aunts and uncles are awesome, and all my cousins and nieces and nephews. It's just, and then, and on Facebook or on Instagram, spending time with my granddaughter and teaching her how to make our spaghetti sauce, what we call Sunday gravy. My uncle Jim he says that's an East Coast term. We're not East Coast Italians, but it doesn't matter. But what I'm hearing is you got to have a purpose in life, and your purpose it's the family. I mean, purely, we work this job as a firefighter is to provide for our family, to provide for a better opportunity for our kids coming up, a better place to live, better opportunity for a career, be it that they want to be a firefighter or not, but they can do it better than I can. If my son didn't want to get into the fire service, he's working for the University of Las Vegas here in Las Vegas for the college. But all I wanted to do is just be able to provide something better for him, so that when his kids, the grandkids, have something even further along. So purpose is the key.
Well, and it isn't, family is, I think, a big part of it, but I think it's also just you figuring out what are the other things you're about in life, and not letting it become so imbalanced that when one thing's gone, man, the scale just flops like this. And I will tell you, because we decided to be transparent and authentic today, there's a cost to that. Every hour you spend, you decide, I'm spending an hour doing this today. That comes at the cost of what you could have been doing other than that with what you chose to do. Through that lens, it just makes it easier to navigate. And I'll tell you, it cost me. Personally and professionally, it cost me to be as committed to my family as I was, and making time for things like church, making time to not only be at my kids' Little League game, but to coach the team and to be involved in that. There was a professional cost to that. There's some promotional opportunities that probably passed me by because I was just unwilling to put the time in while I was able to coach my kids' Little League team. I wasn't going to let that go. So I promoted much later. There are, even within the fire service, there are professional connections you make by being at the bar with the guys at night, or going to the strip clubs, or doing these different things. I was never a participant in any of that. Some was time, some was, I'm not going to go to the strip club out of respect for my wife. I'm not going to do it. And it may sound funny, but I lost friendships along the way because I was unwilling to be in all the different places and I couldn't go on some of the ski trips. I went on some of them when we could, but it's like I told the guys, I love hanging out with you, but I just spent 24 hours with you. I'm not gonna go get breakfast and go get Bloody Marys. My kids are waiting for me. They haven't seen me in 24 hours. There was a price to pay, and I lost friendships along the way. I lost some professional opportunities. Some of the connections that you make when you do those things help you to be in the cool kid club, if you will. I was never part of the cool kid club, man. Always on the periphery of that, because I was always navigating, having an amount of time to do the other things that were important in life. And boy, am I grateful for it now. I'm really grateful for it now, because going to fires, unless something dramatically changes in my world, you never know, but going to fires is now in my rearview mirror. I thank God that I have a happy, healthy marriage and good relationship with my parents and kids.
Yeah. Dan, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I know we got to probably wrap up. I just wanted to share something with you. It's, and I don't think it's in one of the questions, but in regards to what Mike said is, rings true with anybody that looks at your career through the right lens. And we need more education. And like you said, we need more purpose. One of the things that saved me, besides having a loving, caring, understanding wife, is the fact, and not because I was lucky, but because I had another career outside of the fire service. I didn't realize that until about maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm like, and some people have asked me how I got to where I was at. I said, I didn't aspire to do, talk in front of people or speak in front of people or be vulnerable or get in front of anybody and talk about my life at all, or tell or give advice. I'm not a big fan of taking advice, so why am I going to give it? But having that other purpose got me away from the cumulative stress on the job. The other thing in my barometer, which I didn't know until really actually until recently, besides what I've shared openly about what my wife has maybe said about me. She doesn't like me talking about it much, but it'll be funny, but very true and resonate with people, is that there was one time where when I was at home and I said, hey, what do you want to do tomorrow? And she's like, well, aren't you at the firehouse? And I'm like, no, it's my daily day. And she's like, oh, not like an good, but an I'm like, what, you thought I was working? And it made me realize, and I didn't catch it. I caught it, but I didn't catch it well and really ponder it, is that she wanted her time away from grumpy Dan that might have too much on his mind, that didn't give her 100% of his attention. And that's the truth. And it stings. It has stung and it stings. The cool thing is that through intention and through purpose, and I didn't know what retirement was going to be like. I think she had a little bit of concern that if I was home more and every night, that guy that she wanted to be working his daily or being at work was going to be at home. And I think I surprised her and myself that I've been more attentive, but it's been with intention, not by accident. Not always. I mean, again, I work in a stressful world, helping people recover from addiction and mental health. But we've learned through our experiences before on what I need to do, and I need to transition from work to home. And I do a better job at that. And I do a better job speaking it rather than acting it. And you all know what I'm talking about. But the other day, she made a comment to me that just a short one. We were watching TV, and I don't want to bring a tear to your eye, Rob, but she actually said, I'm glad you're home. And, I told people in the keynote back in 2018, my wife loved me, but she didn't always like me. And that statement told me she likes me, and she has liked me. So I did bring a tear to his eye. So you have to be purposeful. If you just go through 30 years in the fire service and hope you have a great career, good luck with that. If you go through 30 years or more or less in the fire service and hope you have a good retirement, good luck with that. That's why we had this thing. And that's why, honestly, Mike, we asked you because of what you have done with Ann and your outspokenness, and you're willing to be vulnerable, because we could, and Pat Kenny was another person, obviously, you know him and we all know him. Bobby wouldn't be as open. He would take us off. I'm kidding. I have to say that because he watches this. But it's like, who would be willing to be open and vulnerable and say, hey, this is what we need to do. We haven't been perfect, but retirement doesn't happen by accident. It shouldn't happen by accident. And you have to be intentional and purposeful if you want a good, like you said, if you did, I think you said 30 something years, maybe between a couple departments, I want 30 years of good retirement. and I have to start that on day one and continue it day after day.
Yeah, I think we'll wrap this up because we've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes. But the one thing, as I was looking into this and the struggle for retirement, and we've talked about purpose. Ironically, being here with the granddaughters in Vegas, I've watched Soul came out from the Disney cartoon. Soul came out on Christmas Day. Most people here are going, unless they have young kids, or I have no idea what you're talking about. But another Disney animation, and I've watched it probably 6 times now with the granddaughter. She likes it, but the character in it, he's fighting for his he believes his passion is his purpose, and wasn't the case. It's being able to establish a purpose in your life, and what are you doing. We do a lot of things that we're great at and we might be passionate at, but it's not necessarily our purpose. Our purpose is something deeper than that. And what I've got from both of you guys is, there's a lot that goes into your retirement. And purpose is a big deal, and where we're going to be going in the future. And the other thing that I was able to get, that I think this is going to help a lot of our listeners that are maybe going to be struggling with the retirement, is don't look at it you're retiring from something. Look at it as you're retiring to something. So you're not retiring from the fire department. That's just your job and what you're going to be doing in the fire service. You're going to be leaving that. But the way that I'm looking at it is I'm going to be retiring into, a new place to live in the future, being able to see my granddaughters grow up and do certain things, being able to watch my kid grow up and be an adult. I mean, one of the greatest things that I love, and why I tell people I love being a grandparent, is, yes, I like spoiling the kids, but what I really love is the conversation I have with my son about the challenges he's having. And I can take him to a day in our lives, and I can paint that picture, play that tape for him, and then go like, but this is what we dealt with. I dealt with this with you. And how now this is your game, kid. You get to decide how you want to do it. So it's just looking forward to the retirement, to where am I going to go to next. So I'll just leave it with that. And Mike, I'll give you an opportunity for some closing statements and whatever you want to say goodbye.
Sure. Well, honored to spend time with you guys, and I really appreciate it. I hope some of it made sense. There's a lot of things that you want to talk about, and there's only so much time to do it. So I would just give an encouragement to all of you that are listening to this. There is a good way to prepare, and I would look into, at least talk to some retirees. I at least did do that, and I would encourage you to do it. I was really fortunate to be able to spend a little time with Brunicini, and he walked me through a couple things that were really helpful. I talked to a few Seattle firefighters that retired happily, which was what my interest was, and I'd really encourage you to do that. Plenty of people out there can talk to you about finances. I'm not that guy, but you do want to look at that stuff a little bit. You want to at least spend some time there. And then I would just give you one sense of encouragement as you move into the next phase. Everything that was true about you when you were on the rigs, being able to help people, being willing to step up when other people are running away, your willingness to face evil, to be one of those that stands in the gap, that's still all true. But nothing has changed about your character, your skill set, your ability to impact the world. And man, if we have witnessed anything over the last year, what our world needs is people of substance and character to stand up and stand in the gap and really help a world that is hurting. And a lot of the kids, I think, that you're seeing in the streets tearing things apart, it's because they found something that they resonate with. Let's give them something better. Let's, as these people now who you have a little more time on your hands and you're not going to fires, how about looking for avenues to really speak to a generation of young people and even people in their 20s and 30s that are really looking for substance. They're looking for an example, something to get excited about, somebody they can believe in. They can't look at They cannot look on the television and see it anymore. You know, you can't see it in politics. You can't see it in Hollywood. You can't see it in the media. They're looking for something that they can say, I believe in that. And we, coming up through the fire service, we have that thing, and we can say a selfless, full tilt commitment to being there for people in need. It's awesome. It's life-changing. And I'm so blown away that I got to spend my professional career doing that, and it doesn't end. It hasn't ended. Part of Ann and I's joy for life is that there is an avenue still, not only in our own family, but in our neighbors. You know, the mission's changed in the last like 9 months. I mean, last year I was flying to do stuff. And this year, man, I'm stuck at home. I can't go anywhere, you know? And when I do go somewhere, I got to wear a mask. We have connected with our neighbors because a lot of our neighbors are a little bit older. They're terrified. We've been able to do things and make sure that they have groceries and things like that. What's true about you as a servant-hearted person who did wonderful things for your fire department, please recognize nothing has changed. You are that same person. The way you apply it is a little bit different. And if I could give you 2 pieces of advice, just keep serving. Keep doing that. And number 2, for all that's holy, I do not want to preach at you, but please allow me 1 second to stay away from the bottle. If I could take one thing away, man, I would rip alcohol out of the fire service. The majority of the devastation that I have seen in people's careers has had nothing to do with getting burned at fires, nothing to do with, you know, marriages that are lost, all of that. The majority of it, when you get right down to net causes, it's because that pain, the hole you feel in your heart, the inadequacies that you feel, somehow you felt like that bottle, or in modern terminology, a bottle of pills, will somehow fix it, and it does not. It makes it exponentially worse and destroys lives. And for retirees that are friends of mine, the loss they feel from not having the fire service has been replaced with extra time at the bar, bellied up to the bar, those types of things, or the uncertainty they feel with COVID and the fear of what's going to happen economically is being replaced by chemicals. It's a terrible master and a terrible substitute. So last thing, man, enjoy. Those of you that are still on the job, enjoy the hell out of it because it's awesome. Savor every day. Love the firefighters you're working with. Don't let some dirtbag captain or battalion chief or deputy chief who wants to make your life miserable, or, you know, the new kind of leadership theory is we're going to make the fire service not be a calling. We're going to make it a job. Screw those guys. Keep it a calling, man. Enjoy it and enjoy the people you're with, and because it'll be over soon. And I just encourage you to love it, man. Dig it, love it, be thankful for it, and kick butt and take names.
Thanks, Mike. Danny?
Yeah, you kind of said it. I believe it. I wanted to believe it as time was going on, is that I don't look at it as an end. I look at it as a beginning. And despite my dad's challenges, he made 26 years into retirement after being a Marine and a Chicago police officer. So we're just one career. People need to have that, not only for themselves, but their family. There are so many people that don't get an opportunity to retire. Line of duty deaths and injuries that lead to early retirement. I'd guarantee if we surveyed all those people, and we know how many there are, insurmountable. We just look at NFPA and a number of injuries every year. I don't know how many lead to the loss of the job. They would gladly change places with any of the people that are still working and be able to go off the job on their own terms. That is as difficult to deal with from my learning of dealing with people that lead to addiction and other mental health stuff that don't get the choice that Mike and I did to do it on our own terms. That is very peaceful. So do what you need to do so that, and that goes on both ends. Do what you need to do from a safety standpoint and from a behavioralistic standpoint so you can retire on your own terms. And the last thing I want you to think about, or people think about, and I think about all the time, I remember when I took the test in 1985, I had to wait till 1989 to get on the test. We had 45,000 people take the exam. I didn't do as well as I thought I would. I landed like 1,200, which is like the top 3%, but I made a mistake in the test. And I knew I did, and I didn't think I was going to get the job, but I was supposed to get the job in 88, and I was 3 people away from getting the job. And I was devastated because my dad, who was a cop, called people on the department and said, no, they're not going to hire. We had a new mayor and they weren't going to hire anymore. I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyhow, hiring freeze for a year, got on a job. I remember getting that letter in the mail. Couldn't have been it's like Santa, right? The Easter Bunny. Don't tell me they're not real because I'll get pissed off. Getting married, the first time you had sex.
Dear.
With somebody else, by the way. Sorry. Yeah, you knew what was going to happen. But if you lose that throughout your career, that is as much on you as on other people. Keep that into retirement because, seeing Mike smile, seeing Rob, seeing all the people that we know and other people that have retired. Every time I see a retiree when I play golf with them, if they're not smiling, I'll ask them, hey, are you okay? Because we deserve it. But that doesn't happen by accident. So keep that feeling all the way till at retirement and into retirement, because that's what I'm trying to do. So Mike, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, honored.
Honored.
Appreciate both of you guys' time, and thank everybody that joined us and was listening. Hopefully they were entertained somewhat. Those that waited to the end for the sex. But
brother, you didn't tell me you wanted sex stuff. I would have brought some of that.
I know you've got it in your book, so we'll have to have you on another time. Maybe have you and Ann on and let you guys, tag team the whole book thing and you guys talk about that. But I do appreciate your guys' time. Like I say, you guys are. I could talk to you guys for a long, long time, and our listeners, we'd be down to no listeners. It'd just be us talking. So we'll.
But you're in Vegas, so you got to go, man. You got a show to watch, and you got to go gamble.
Nope. I'm actually going to be closing this up and having lunch with the grandkids and the family. So I love both of you. You guys are 2 of my favorites and great mentors. So I appreciate the time, and I appreciate everybody listening with us today. Thank you.
God bless.
Yeah, thanks, guys, and everybody out there. See you next time.